control dog shirts, which all of our dogs could have used this morning. That keeps them afraid of the thunder. You clip your little leash to them. It's called BOGO. Buy one, get one free. And I think this idea was the precursor of couponbug.com and extreme couponing. You know, those folks that spend several hours a week clipping out all of those coupons or printing them off from the internet so that they can end up spending $10 on groceries rather than $150 or more. Of course, there are some catches to using those coupons. Just how long at your house will it take to use up 3 bottles of ketchup or 20 cans of corn or 6 mega rolls of bath tissue? But it's becoming all the rage, and you can watch extreme couponing on TLC TV to get you all trained up and ready to go. BOGO! So how about you? Would you like to have more disposable income? Well, we can have it if we revise our budget just a little bit. Here's some ways that maybe we can revise our budget just a little bit. If we cut eating food and spending money on food expenses, an average family will save about $6,372 a year. Or if we cut out our mortgage payment and we just go live in a cardboard box, we can save about $16,895. And if we don't buy any new clothes, we can save more than $1,500. Oh, and get rid of the car. Get rid of the car and we'll save about $2,000 in gas and oil alone, not counting a car payment. And insurance. Who needs life, health, auto, property insurance? Who needs it? Save yourself another $9,000. Add up all of these, and we will have more than $43,000 of disposable income that we didn't have before. Now, problem is, we do need those things to survive, most of them. No matter how good or bad the economy is, we still have to plunk down some cash to keep from living on the street. Some people will make more money, some will make less, but no matter how much we have coming in, we have to be careful about how much is going out. When we look at the percentages, we begin to realize that needs far outstrip wants in terms of value for the average household. At the end of the pay period, most of us don't have a lot left over. And how about our spiritual life? You know, is it time to do some spiritual shopping? Christ gives us an opportunity to re-examine our priorities. For us, it's the economy. And in Isaiah's day, the crisis of exile makes the fluctuating economy seem like a mere inconvenience by comparison. In the 55th chapter that I read, the prophet acts a bit like a financial advisor who is teaching his clients to change their habits in light of a new and emerging economy, a spiritual economy that involves exercising discretion and choosing God's abundance rather than the idolatry that led to judgment and exile in the first place. In Isaiah's budget and in God's grocery market, there is plenty for all. And how about the gospel passage where Jesus feeds 5,000 people with just a few loaves of bread and some fish? What the story really illustrates is Jesus' power to take even our smallest gifts and infinitely multiply them with more than enough left over. Jesus tells the disciples to bring the meager gift of 5 loaves and 2 fishes to him. The disciples were dubious about whether this small amount of food would feed such a large crowd, but Jesus knew that it wasn't the size of the gift that mattered. What mattered was the giving. What mattered was the giving. What Jesus asks us to do is to give whatever it is that we have. And that doesn't always mean giving money. Jesus wants whatever we can offer, no matter how small. Perhaps it's the gift of time. Maybe it's the gift of an understanding ear, the gift of a ride to church, the gift of a smile for a stranger, the gift of clothes for someone in need. These are gifts that Jesus can take and Jesus can multiply. We heard that when Anne was talking to the children and taking this little bit of food and multiplying it for the multitudes. He can multiply to infinity, blessing not just us, but the multitudes. And in the same way that God can grow a small apple seed or a peach pit into an entire orchard of trees that produce even more fruit to feed the multitudes, God can take our smallest gift of love, our smallest gift of time, of prayer, of generosity, and transform it into a gift that keeps on giving, not just in our community, but in our state, in our country, and around the world. Let's look at what God offers. Come to the waters, the prophet begins. Come to the waters. The image of water is used to pronounce judgment on Judah. Come to the waters. Well, Americans purchase more than 31 billion bottles per year of water at a cost of $11 billion. That's 11 billion with a B. It is an environmental disaster, and in blind taste tests, tap water time and time again wins hands down. In lab testing, bottled water is no better than tap water. And still, we throw our money away and buy enough plastic bottles of water to carpet a path to the moon and back several times over. In Isaiah, the people refused to take the needed spiritual water God was giving to them. And so God was going to bring this chaotic flood. He was going to bring a chaotic flood upon them in the form of a foreign invasion. God invites the people to drink of the water that he is offering, much like Jesus invited the Samaritan woman to drink the living water that he was offering in the Gospel of John. Now, not only does God offer the water of his life-sustaining presence, but he also asks the people to come and to receive the grace-filled gifts of staples from the abundance of God's own stores. You know, he tells them in the scripture to take the wine that he offers, to take the milk, these staples of life. He tells them to take and to claim those things, and that they cost nothing. So it indicates that God is really throwing a feast. It costs nothing. God is throwing a feast by supplying those basics. Those who had long been surviving on whatever their captors had provided were now offered a new start, a new economy, an economy of grace and abundance. That economy, however, required some discretionary thought. He says, "Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread?" Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread? And your labor for that which does not satisfy? We know that bread was a staple of the ancient world. This was something that was very important to them from the beginning when manna was given from heaven. The very bread that we will be sharing with one another in a few moments. Bread was a necessity. It was not just some simple want. And God reminds the people that his spiritual economy runs on their faithfulness on the one hand and his grace on the other. They needed to rely on God's stable provision, which he had been providing since the days when he fed their ancestors, when it all began with that manna in the desert. The returning exiles were thus being charged to establish a new spiritual budget where the highest priority was always directed to God. God was inviting them to, in effect, sign again on the dotted line. To sign again on the dotted line of the covenant that had been in effect since the time of Abraham and most recently had been carried forward by King David. David's royal descendant would ultimately bring the economy of God's kingdom to bear and provide a place of refuge and reconciliation for the entire world. The people were thus to return from the pain of exile with a new dream of what God was going to do, not only for them, but for the entire creation. It is with that future in mind that God invites his people into a new way of ordering their lives, which includes not only their spirits, but all of their gifts, all of their talents, all of their resources. There was a film actor who was noted for portraying sinister gangsters several decades ago, and he was notorious for his gangland associations in real life. And he acquired and disposed of over $10 million in the course of his career. And once he was chided by a friend for his extravagant spending habits, and he was asked, just what did you do with that money? And he said, well, he said, you know, part of the loot, it went for gambling. And then he said, well, and then part of the loot, it went for playing the ponies. And then part of it went for women. And then the rest of it I just spent foolishly. If we dream God's kingdom dream, a dream of justice and peace, a dream of freedom from anxiety, a dream of God's reign and rule on the earth and in our lives, it will radically change our priorities. We will no longer see our gifts and money, talents, and possessions as ours, but as belonging to God. We will recognize that we are not really owners, but we are stewards, and we are caretakers of the things which God has entrusted to us. If we dream that dream, we will not be thinking so much about what we acquire as we will about what we can be giving away. If we dream that dream, we'll begin to see that we are not alone, but we are part of a community begin to dream about how God will use our lives for eternal purposes, we will dream a dream of freedom. The prophet Isaiah's invitation, come, buy, eat. This is God's invitation. And the implication is that there is no waiting to receive the blessing of the Lord. Come and be satisfied right now. Now, we know all about waiting, don't we? Know all about waiting. A study was done by the Mystery Shopping Providers Association, who calculated the average wait time in several United States cities. One who lives in Philadelphia, studies show, there is a waiting at the checkout line at the grocery store of more than 7 minutes. Washington, D.C. is nearly 9 minutes, and I think that serves those politicians right. But did you know that Atlanta, Georgia, the waiting time is just a little over 2? Just a little over 2 minutes. Now think about how long 7 or 8 minutes is. Think about how many text messages you could tap out in that time. How many pages of your Nook or Kindle you could be reading. Or how many games you could be playing on your iPhone or your iPod. Or think about what you could be doing if this sermon were only 7 or 8 minutes shorter. Yes. But no waiting. No waiting when you work out your Isaiah budget. No waiting when you accept God's invitation. What small gift do you have that you have not brought to God yet because you feel ashamed or you feel that it is not enough? What are we holding on to that could be a blessing to everyone in this church and people in this community? Whatever we bring to God will be more than enough. There is no lack in God. There is no lack in God. But it is not all BOGO. It is not all buy one, get one free. A spiritual economy involves exercising discretion in choosing God's abundance and not idolatry. There is more in God than we could ever ask or imagine. God stands ready every minute of every day to transform even the smallest act of kindness, smallest act of mercy, smallest act of generosity into a gift that will absolutely feed the multitudes. And it will result in baskets and baskets of leftover blessings. Isaiah says to us this morning, eat what is good and delight yourselves in rich food.